So today I'm going to see if I can catch her, and I'm walking in with the halter, and we'll just see where this takes me. And this is the third session. We have some things working pretty well from the last couple sessions. She's already curious about me. She's already pretty relaxed. She's already fairly willing to draw. Her overall appearance is softer. Her jaw is loose. She's still a little apprehensive about me reaching right toward her face, but she is significantly less afraid. So some good stuff. Ready to work toward getting actually caught, I think. So I'm going to do everything pretty much the same, only I have a halter in my arms. And we'll see how that goes. I want to make sure all my gear is prepared. I have no idea how long this will take, but I want to make sure that if the opportunity arises that I'm ready to halter her. I'm not fumbling around with my equipment right under her chin, because that would be pretty scary for her. So I approach straight on. She says that's all okay. She lets me right into her left side. And this is where my hand would have to go to halter her, so I want to make sure she's comfortable with that. And we hit a threshold there. It's nice to find a threshold so that you can stay under it in the future. She came right back, which is pretty good. She's had some trouble haltering in the past, some trouble with ropes, some trouble with all of this business, so it's actually harder to fix this kind of stuff than it is to put it in nicely in the first place. If she'd never been haltered, it might be easier to get a halter on her, but she's had experiences that haven't left her with good memories, so that got her a little bothered. And I'm just going to go right back to seeing if I can draw her. So there, I've got my draw back. Anytime anything gets messy, it's always good to just go back down to the basics, back down the line. You're never too advanced to go back down the line. Just preparing her for the look of my hand coming under her jaw. Seeing if she can feel pretty good there. She's definitely getting more accepting of me moving around her, being in haltering position. I'll see how she feels here, and that was still too much for her. So this definitely brought up a lot more concerns for her than just going to touch her, which is understandable considering she's had some bad experiences, but she keeps coming back, so I know we have some good things working. And there's a nice looking shoe, and she's ready for me to come back in. There's some concern coming back up. And she softened a little. And just like with everything else, it's not about getting the halter on, it's getting her feelings about being haltered working in a better way for her. So I'm certain she can get haltered if you chase her around and all that business, but that's not what I want to do. So here I'm just going to see, where's the threshold of me bringing this halter up? How much can she take before she can't take anymore? So if I bring this halter up, rub her with it. She's doing pretty well there. And take it away. So now that I know where the threshold is, I can stay under it and just bring that halter up to rub her with it and take it away. So when I reached my hand in there, she lifted her head up a little, so I changed the position of my hand, and that helped her stay centered. I always want to make sure that the way that I present things is a way that she can understand and she can feel comfortable about. I'm just getting her to be able to have me rub her with the rope while my hand is underneath her jaw, because that's the position I'm going to halter in, and I want to make sure that she's comfortable. So there's nothing surprising, no loss of rhythm on my part, nothing startling. Sometimes with some of these more feral horses, the most scary part of haltering is that we lose rhythm in our movements and we stop moving for a second, and then all of a sudden the halter appears and our movements are a little jerky. And so I want to make sure that my movements are very smooth and nothing comes out of nowhere. So she felt pretty good about that. Just doing this process in little pieces. It's not about haltering her today. It's about setting up a nice foundation for haltering for her to carry through the future. So I really like the way this is going today. She invited me back in. Her jaw's nice and loose. And I can go right into my spot here. And when I lost her, I just draw her back. It's kind of normal for a horse who's had trouble with something to be okay with it 1 minute and then suddenly say no again. And I need to respect that, because that experience of being haltered probably hasn't done a lot of good for her in the past. So if she says, yes, it's okay 1 minute, and no, the next minute, I can't push. I need to honor that, back up a little bit. But I definitely do want to try and help her learn to get through that as well. So that's that fine line we walk. I want to make sure too that I approach her equally from both sides, and I try to be aware that I don't get her just comfortable on one side with me approaching. I like that quite a bit. It's important to do all this on the horse's time in a way that she can process and make little moments where she starts to register good feelings about this whole process. So you have to think about how many repetitions in her life she's had where haltering has caused her anxiety, tension, concern. And so it's going to take a lot more repetitions of these little moments where she's not concerned and not tense to replace that. It's not going to be any kind of quick fix, that's for certain. Here's my haltering position, petting her with the lead rope, making sure that everything is smooth. There, she let down a little bit. Making sure she's okay with me touching her face, behind her ears, all the places the halter is going to go. Here she's letting down a little bit more. I not only want her to not be afraid of the haltering process, but I'd like her to make associations with it, bringing her good feelings. So if my hand can rub her muscles that are tight up here a little bit, if my halter can be the source of some good feeling, that will make quite a difference in the long run for her.
Hi.
I like it when I walk away from them and for them to kind of go, where are you going? Every horse is going to have different spots they're comfortable with you standing in to start with. And it's important to start in those places, kind of read where the horse says is comfortable, but to slowly work those spots of comfort to be a little bit more broad. Initially, she was only comfortable with me right in front of her and on the right side, and then now it's gotten to be where she's more comfortable with me on her left side a little bit more evenly. So start out where they say is okay and slowly work your way up. I'm still rubbing with my halter, and I try to walk away when she's feeling soft and a little less tense. Some good releases. And she says that wasn't too bad. I always approach where she's comfortable and then work my way over. Now she's getting way more comfortable with me bringing that halter up. And again, I try not to lose rhythm. I try not to make my hands do anything sudden, static, or scary, or rub her hair in a way that frightens her. I try not to wobble the rope under her chin. She's already suspicious enough, so I'm trying to not do anything to add to that suspicion. In this instance, I decided to just tie the halter under her chin instead of putting her nose through it, because that is the moment in her past where she would bolt. And so I felt that this would be a better experience to start with, and it would be a nice building block. It's a lot easier when you have a horse being haltered for the first time than one who's learned how to bolt, especially when I bring the halter up toward her face. That would cause her some concern, trigger some old habits, and she would leave there. So I'm doing my best to avoid bringing that up. And there she was a lot smoother and even tipped her nose toward me. So it's important to be adaptable and not get stuck in a this is how I always treat horses kind of routine, or this is how I teach halter breaking. Every horse is an individual, and a retraining horse is significantly different than one who's haltering for the first time. I have to take into account what do they know, what amount of that is not good, and what do I want them to know versus what have they learned that's unfortunate. So when you have a horse who's learned some things that aren't good, you want to be sure to be careful to not bring those things up. So if she were to feel tense or worried or too much pressure, she would revert back to some of those things that she knows. And what I'm trying to do is to put in some new information, and so I have to walk a little bit of a fine line to make sure those things don't come up so she can experiment with other habits. And people can be like that too, you know, people who have had bad experiences, they assume things are one way when they actually aren't. And you might have to walk on eggshells a little bit sometimes around them to make sure that they don't go to their defense mechanisms. Especially people who have had accidents with horses and gotten injured. The horse can, swat a fly or stomp a leg, and suddenly the person is convinced they're going to buck. And horses are kind of the same way. If I move suspiciously around her, she'll be sure something is going to happen. So in order to build trust, I move in the way that she's comfortable with, and then we expand from there. And I think one thing that I greatly disagree with that I see in the horse world a lot is if a horse has an issue with something, we tend to push on that button. Say if the horse is afraid of something, we tend to bombard them with the thing that they're afraid of. And I think that does not build trust. That really depletes trust. And it's like if you were afraid of clowns and somebody put a clown in every corner of your room, you would become so jumpy. I think it can actually make the problem far worse. But on the same token, you don't want to avoid the things that are making them afraid either. But I find it so important to develop trust and to build a relationship so you can tackle those problems in a more healthy way that lasts a little bit longer, A lot of that desensitization tactics that I see require constant reinforcement. You have to reinforce it daily. We have to constantly flood them, constantly desensitize so that they don't get spooky again. And I really think that if they're confident, if they trust you, then they're willing to take a look at stuff that makes them afraid and ask you for help instead of shutting out stimulus. I don't ever want her to shut something out. I want her to be very aware. I want her to know exactly what's happening around her and exactly what she should do. I have no interest in riding a desensitized horse because I like them to be sensitive enough to be able to read and respond to their environment. But I also don't want to ride a horse who's afraid of everything. So therein lies that fine line we walk. And the more I repeat this in a way that doesn't scare her, again, I'm building more repetitions of a good feeling than she's had in the past of a bad feeling being haltered. And that could take a while, but we're having a pretty nice session here. I really love how much she's working her jaw, breathing, lowering her neck, just starting to feel a little safer. Sometimes when I get up to her in this position, she would lock her neck and make her head just really rigid, and I think that was just a defense mechanism, but she's starting to feel really soft. Even when I take the halter off too, I try to do it smoothly so it doesn't drop under her chin. And then I kind of keep her tipped toward me and feeling nice and soft as much as I'm able to today. And nothing happens abruptly or in a floppy way. And people tend to get task-oriented when they're doing things like saddling, haltering, and they forget about the horse, because we're thinking, I've got to tie this knot, I've got to lift this halter up. So it's important to do the task while monitoring the horse and their expression and where your body is in space and where your hands are, and all of those things can make or break the experience for a horse, because a horse lives in a sensory world. We kind of tend to think in words, and we get a little more logical about things where they're just relying on the senses completely. Sense is an instinct, so if I want a horse to feel good, then I have to think like they think. I can't expect her to think like I think. And I can't expect her to think, oh, that was just your thumb slipping or the rope flop. She didn't mean anything by it, because she doesn't know that. I haven't proved that to her yet, so I have to be careful with the way that I move. And I have to use consideration and tact in how I do these things. I have to start working with her with where she is, not with where I think she should be. In general, I'm just really thrilled with this session. I'm thrilled with how she feels. I'm thrilled with what I'm leaving her feeling like. I'm thrilled that as I'm walking out here, she's following me out. I think this is an overall really productive session, and I can't wait to try it again.